want to tell you what I envision, and this will just help me to share with you. When I was a kid, just few years ago, we had a body, we had a church kind of thing, and it was pretty small. I grew up in this environment where we really depended on each other, and it was just incredibly profound. As a kid, I got to see people set free, miraculous healings, just really cool things. Met people from all over the United States. We would have camp meetings and people would come from all over. But the really cool part about all this is that in these meetings that we had, we really practiced body ministry. I don't know if that's almost a foreign word these days, but body ministry really meant that nobody, you didn't know who was going to speak or who was going to lead out into song, and it was just a lot of fun. And I envision that. I don't know how that'll work with a large group, but I still envision that. I envision that the body will still minister. And I long for that. That's why oftentimes it's not just like a little petty thing that like I'm trying to get you out of the way so I can talk, but I long to hear that God spoke to you or God gave you a word and you're going to share it. And I want to hear what God's doing in your life, because you can't come and just be an audience. You can't come and just be an audience. And so what's happening is God's calling us up to a greater level of responsibility where you really do have something to say. You have something to give. And it's really cool, and we can come together like this and like when we speak and we pray for each other and minister to one another. That's part of it. It's part of it. Just all these tricks that they do, race car driving and all the stunts they do, and then that little disclaimer on the bottom that says this is for professional people only. Don't try this at home. None of that is applicable to the kingdom, because whatever you see and you ask God to give you in your heart, whenever you do that, then you too can do this. You can be everything that you've ever seen anybody do. And I want to see that. I want to see us operate with body ministry where you have something to contribute, where God's been speaking to you. Yeah. I've found is that oftentimes whatever's happening out there is really a big deal, but what's happening inside is just as big a deal, and God's working on you. So oftentimes whenever you first starting out doing things, when you pray or when you do things like that, you get little or no results, and it's almost like it's a test to see if are you gonna hang in here? Are you gonna do this? And this week I had a guy, and I can still remember the look on his face, because I did some work for him and I offered him some things, and he says, "No, I'm fasting." And I said, "Oh." He said, "Okay." So let's take some cookies for later after you get through fasting. He says, No. He says, "No, I'm," and just the look on his face, you have to catch. He says, "No, I'm Muslim." And when he said that, it was kind of like, I'm Muslim, and I could feel his heart reaching out for something else. You know what I'm saying? It was like, it was like, I'm Muslim, question mark. Kind of like, oh. And so you just, you get to move in then and just, plant some seed. And it didn't go as well as I had hoped it would go, but at least the initial thing. But I'm just praying that God will keep working on Amon and just keep working on him, and this is really cool. So I'm just praying, and I in your spare time, that you can just ask the Lord to give me wisdom, because I speak to Muslims all the time. All the time, I'm always talking to them. Just really, really cool. And I had one a couple of weeks ago. He says, I'm Muslim. He says, and I know you're a Christian. He says, I know you're a Christian. He said, but this is what we can do together, and he was saying that kind of stuff, and I was like, on the inside, I was like, I don't want to work together with you, And he says, I'm not afraid to fight, and he's going to protect me and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, whatever. Whatever. Here's I got this week. I got to experience some things, and let me just say to you that more and more I'm becoming aware of the fact that I need to be even more careful about stories that I tell and things that I say, because people listen online. That they need to be protected. So I'm learning this, and it's good for me. But I don't want to skip over the fact that He's really doing some really cool things, and you get to watch people restored. And you have to know when I say this, I'm not talking just in general terms. I watched this happen just this week. God restore a fella, and it was just so cool, because we were standing in the streets in St. Louis, and it was raining like this, and we had no place to go, because they kind of run us out of one of the shops, because we were praying in there, and they said, you have to leave, and so we stood outside in the rain and just prayed together. And man, he just, God flooded him, and he was just so excited. He's texting me back, and just really just cool that God's doing that kind of stuff. So here's what we do, and all the stuff and the stories I'm telling you, you need to be really careful that you don't push this off like this is just for you, because it's not just for me. It's for all of us, and it's what God intends. It's what I started with earlier. Body ministry is really where it's at. The body needs to minister. You need to participate, because when I say you need to, it's not an obligation. It's a privilege. And I'm already speaking. You can turn to Isaiah chapter 42. But here's what happens. There's a thing that comes over us when we don't keep priorities right. Something comes over us, and we get the proverbial cart before the horse. And what that means is that we rearrange priorities. And I think what we've done is we've made the Great Commission the first priority. It's coming. It's soaking in. It's soaking in. We've made the Great Commission our first priority, and it should not be our first priority. The first priority needs to be the first commandment, which is love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then the second one is the Great Commission, and love your neighbor as yourself. Let love flow out. And so as we focus on this, we love the Lord, then everything that we do becomes a product of loving the Lord. I get into this a lot when I'm working with people that I'm I'm marrying, or I'm doing the ceremony. I'm not marrying them. You know what I mean? People call and get it quite a bit. You know, women will call and say, "Will you marry me?" And I said, "No, I'm already married." They say, "Oh, no, I mean, will you do our ceremony?" Yeah. So what we do is you know, when I'm speaking with people, and a lot of these people are, you know, they're not very God conscious, if at all. They're just looking for a place or for somebody to do their ceremony. And so, you know, I go through this counseling thing and you know, bringing people into an understanding that, you know, you may have it together, you may think you do, but, you know, let's add something else here that's going to take your relationship from, you know, really cool and this is just really neat to wow. You know, we're going to give you an upgrade. You know, I mean, it's really cool to fly, you know, over the water and go to a foreign country. That's really cool. But did you know that there's seats that you can take that recline, and they give you free food and all that? Did you know that? I mean, it's called first class, and I think we need to be looking for, and here's really the key for all of us today, is that we need to be looking for an upgrade. When Jesus, when he ended his ministry, his final ride was on a donkey. He wasn't walking anymore. And for that day, that was an upgrade. You know? You're not walking anymore, you're going to ride a donkey. There's something about that. And I believe that God's giving us this place or this position in him that something is shifting. There's a real shift that's taking place. And I want to move into that. And I believe that there's something amazing for us in these things that if we'll start to look, something will change, and we'll have something really cool going on. Isaiah chapter 42, we'll start with verse 5. Thus saith the Lord, He that created the heavens and stretcheth them out, he that spreadeth forth the earth, and that which cometh out of it, he that giveth breath unto the people, and spirit that they could walk in. I, the Lord, have called thee in righteousness, and will hold thine hand, and will keep thee, and give thee for a covenant of people, for a light of the Gentiles. What is it? This is God saying this to us. This is who we are. He's called us in righteousness. He's holding our hand. He's given us a covenant. That's pretty cool, right? He's given us a covenant. We're in relationship. Something's happened here. We're not just floating. We're not just pursuing God. And I think this is really a huge thing. You need to understand that it's not just us that's pursuing him. He's pursuing us. He's in pursuit. And what's important for me to grasp is that in his pursuit of me, everything that's going on in my life, everything that's happening is a God pursuit after me. I didn't say that God did it to me, but everything that's going on in my life is God that's pursuing me, and it's my responsibility. It's my obligation to find what God's saying. And just like DJ was saying, you can be set free from the hurt of a father or whatever, or a mother, somebody, and you can be all good, and then something will happen that will bring all that back. And it's like, well, I guess I never got set free in the first place. No, that's not true. It's just that God wants to add dimension. He wants to add a greater measure of freedom to all the hurt or all the things that have happened in my life. And He's going to bring purpose and meaning to that. And how often has it been that I've looked back in my life, and while I was going through it, I thought that I'd been forsaken. Have you guys ever felt like you were forsaken? Yeah? Okay, for those that haven't, are you human? You go through times and you feel like that, that you don't feel God's favor at all. You feel like that, the Lord's kind of teasing you. I got teased a lot when I was a kid. I'm number 8 in the line of 10, and there was a lot in front of me, and just a lot of stuff that would go on, and it was, and so it because of that, it would be easy for me to take on that, they're out to get me, or they're picking on me, all that kind of stuff. But what's cool is that God's in this business of showing us, and it's our perspective of God that allows us to see into our own lives and see God's pursuit of me. That's why it's so important that I get some things correct. And the things that I need to get correct is that I need to know who He is. And these are the two most important things that you will ever know in your life. Number one is I need to know who God is. And when I don't mean know who He is, like, well, yeah, He's God. Or as Bette Midler would say, He's out there watching me from a distance. He's not at all from a distance. He's very, very up close, and He's speaking into our heart. In fact, the sound of heaven, the sound of God is going out. It's resonating everywhere. It's really cool. I mean, we went to the Science Center this week and saw, this movie on the IMAX, The Great Planet Earth. And it's just amazing how that, they're seeing all these things from outer space and the way things are. And you're looking at all that stuff, and you're seeing there's radio waves and things that are out there that you don't even know. But it's going on. It's going on without you. There's something, even in this room, there's something in the air. And what happens is that when you don't recognize it, or you don't take the time for it, or you don't tune your ear, then it goes on without you. It's not that it's not going on. It's not going on because you think it's not going on, but honestly, it's still there. It's happening. And it's my obligation to develop the right kind of a receiver so that I'm receiving the things that are coming from God on the right level. Otherwise, I take it personal, or I take offense at things that are not going easy for me. Something's not working out, or a relationship is not working, or somebody hurts my feelings. What happens is that if I send it out, if I send it out in that tone, and I get an attitude, or I get my heart is not tuned correctly, then everything becomes an offense to me, and I'm just an offense waiting. I'm looking for a circumstance that I can tag my offense to. And I have to be on guard for that. Not even so much on guard, but I don't want to be guarded as much as I want my heart to be open to hear what God's saying in every circumstance, in every situation. I want to know what He's saying because God's speaking. There's a word, there's a voice, there's something that's coming from heaven all the time, and I have this. There's this thirst inside of me. I want to know what God's saying. That's why, the first thing that happens to me when I stir myself up all the time. I'm always doing this, and whether it's just me personally or I'm listening to things, I'm stirring myself up because I want to fine tune this. I want my receiver to be fine-tuned so I can hear clearly. I don't want to. I don't want to go into areas of bad reception. I can be talking to somebody on my car phone. I can be talking to somebody on my phone, and I can tell them, hey, just so you know, I'm going through an area, and I can tell you there are certain areas that I have very poor reception, and most of the time I will lose calls when I drive through that one area. I think it might be an interference. One of them is right near the airport. If I'm driving right where the St. Anne police are parked all the time, when I drive by there, I lose reception. And what happens is that in our own walk with God, oftentimes there are areas that we know that this is a poor reception area. So what am I going to do? What am I going to do about that? How am I going to do this where I'm not where I'm not really hearing? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to be silent, because whenever I feel like that nothing is working, my default position in my own spirit always has to be the same thing. What do you think it might be? What should be our default position? Do you understand this language at all? Default position? You know, if I said this 30 years ago, you know, it wouldn't make sense. Default. You know, if I said to you hard drive, you'd think I was talking about, you know, driving cows through a pasture. It's a hard drive. You know? No. Default position. What is a default position? What is it? What should default be? Worship. Of course, it should always be worship. I should, you know, and really I can even make it more clear, is that my default position should always be thanksgiving. I always move into that, because why? I'm positioning my heart so that even in periods and times of low reception, I can, the lowest that I can go, I've still got a can with a string. And I can always get a signal. I can always tap in. And even if it doesn't feel like it, even if I feel like that I'm getting nowhere, hey, if necessary, it can be a smoke signal. It's okay. Because honestly, I know that God's always there. It just feels like He's not. And sometimes God, literally, He backs up. He hides Himself from us to see what's in our own heart. And not to expose you and to say, you know, you see what a bad person you are. It's not even that at all. He backs up so that whenever He backs up, then it's our opportunity to pursue even more and to say, no, I'm steady, I'm steadfast, I'm courageous, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep doing this. Here's what's crazy, and I've noticed this, and I was thinking this. I got up this morning thinking, because of several things that even happened to me through the night in my dreams. I was, oftentimes people, you know, when you're doing things and when you're trying things or in your pursuit of God and it's not working and it doesn't look like anybody else is following you, people are full of criticism. They criticize you about it all, and they talk about what all's not working and why it's not working, and they're really critical. But when they see that it's starting to work, then what they do is they'll come in and they'll take bits and pieces of what they see. They'll take the things that they like and they'll begin to bolt it on to what they're already doing. Here's what God's saying. Verse 7, we'll continue here, but because I want to show you about what happens when the danger of us bolting on things. Do you understand when I say that we take bits and pieces instead of allowing God to transform us and to be totally made new? We bolt on things and we kind of patch up the old. And what it really does is, you know, instead of us being a bride, it's like, you know, it's like Frankenstein's girlfriend. You know, we've bolted on this and bolted on that, and we don't look very inviting. It's just kind of weird. And so I think that He's taking us to this place where we're not trying to be, we're not trying to add on something. We're not trying to do that. God wants to take us to a place that's totally different than where we've ever been. Verse 7, to open the blind eyes, to bring out prisoners from the prison, and them that sit in darkness out of prison house. I am the Lord, that is my name. And my glory I will not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. Now, you know, be careful when you read these, because when you see this in the light of who God really is and what He wants to be for us, you know, I'm telling you that these scriptures are not read with all this judgment in mind. They're read with this understanding that God says, my glory I will not give to another. He's not going to give His glory to another. And we're not to worship graven images. But the cool thing is that because God, He's well settled in who He is, He's not out there in this spot and going to get shattered because we don't always do the right thing. Because God is very secure in who He is. He knows who He is, and He's not afraid to be who He is. And so whenever we read this, I don't want you to take it like, there's this great judgment here that's coming. I am the Lord, it's my name. Verse 9, behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. So here's what's happening. God is doing a new thing. And is it new, really like new to God? No, it's not new to Him. But God's doing a new thing. There's this great shift that's happening, a tremendous shift. And God's using dreams and visions and experiences. He's using those things to begin to turn our heart, because an awful lot of what we know has to be unlearned. There's an awful lot of undoing that has to happen in order for us to step into the fullness of what God's intention is. And that becomes really, really uncomfortable. He wants to, and not just wants to, but He's doing a new thing. There's tremendous things that are happening that God's shifting, and I have to be ready for that to take place. And then go on over to the 43rd chapter. He tells us again that He's doing a new thing. He said, verse 1, but now, thus saith the Lord that created thee, O Jacob, and formed thee, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by name. Thou art mine. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers, and they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. Verse 4, since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, I have loved thee, therefore I give men for thee and people for thy life. Pretty cool. Fear not, I am with thee. I will bring thy seed from the east and gather thee from the west. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, keep not back. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Even every one that is called by my name, for I have created him for my glory. I have formed him, yea, I have made them. God is doing something really, really incredible. And what's happening is that I feel like that this is not just a makeover. It's not just, we're not just rearranging things, and we're not just putting the chairs in different position. You're not moving the furniture. God is doing something really cool, and it's not just fixing you up to make you look a little different. He's making you brand new. And what's happening in making us brand new is that God is teaching us and bringing us to this place of love where we are loving to the point of distraction. I mean, we've been so filled with love that we are just absolutely distracted. It's like I can't even function like I used to, because I am so in love with Jesus. It's distracting to me. I think about it all the time. And this is what God's bringing us to this love for Him and love of in His ways. We were singing the song this morning, about show me your ways. Show me your ways. Show me your ways, Lord. And I'm reminded of the scripture, I think it's Psalm 68. He showed His acts to the children of Israel and His ways to Moses. Moses knew more than just what God could do. He knew who God was. There was something that had happened to Moses on the inside, and it was more than just knowing about God. It was knowing who God really is. And when what God's doing is He's bringing us into this place of distraction where I'm so distracted at who He is. And the issue is that I have to be willing to be led into this to show I want to know God in the way that He really is, not just the way that I've heard about or what's happened to me in the past or the way I've been taught, but to really know God and to know this the exceeding greatness of this grace. And I will say this now, because you guys know, you know, there's a certain retraction that happens. Watch carefully what I'm saying. We retract whenever we hear something come from somebody that we know that something's not right in their life. Can't really receive from that. And I'm going to tell you loud and clear, God is not afraid of any of that stuff. He's not afraid of it, and you shouldn't be either. You shouldn't be afraid that we're compromising or that something's getting let down or it's not going to work. I know of all the old stuff. We can't let that kind of stuff. We can't even let that stuff creep into church. I don't know what you're thinking, but that's the place that they need to be the most. And so this is what we get. This is what we get to do, and our hearts don't need to be afraid. And you don't need the biggest problem that we have. You guys are all right? You okay? The big problem that Peter had was that he had this encounter with God, and this sheet came down and said, this has nothing to do with homosexuality or any of that kind of stuff, but it's a principle that I want to show you. A sheet comes down from heaven. Arise, Peter, and eat. Oh, no, not so, Lord. Not so. So it happens again. Oh, Lord, not so. Not so. The third time it happens, Lord, have you forgot? I'm kosher. You wrote the book on this. I can't do this. I can't get up in the morning and eat bacon. I can't do that. You've got to be kidding. And so, you've got to imagine now, and I'm telling you, in the culture, that they could not even be seen with Gentiles. They certainly couldn't go to their house and eat. It was just crazy. I mean, when we look back at it now, and it's like us now watching movies about what happened in the 60s when they had bathrooms for black people. I mean, we look at it now like, really? That really happened? It's just weird. Yeah. Colored people had to go over here. No coloreds in this bathroom. It's just weird. And we look back at this stuff now and we think, really, that's how it happened. They couldn't be seen with Gentiles. They could not be, they certainly couldn't go to their house. So here's Peter, and he's walking, and he's on his way. He's on his way to Cornelius' house to try to get this thing sorted out and figure out what's going on. And when he gets there, and he's still full of apprehension. You got to know he's like, how am I going to explain this to the boys? And do you know that same conversation goes in our head over and over and over again? How am I going to explain this to my sister or my brother or to my cousins or to my brother-in-law? I know how they feel about this stuff, and so we're really apprehensive about what we do because we know we know the drama that it's going to cause when they find out that there was somebody like that in my place. What's really funny is that if necessary, and I am going to say this, if necessary, God will cause it to happen right under your own roof so that you will love them. Because I'm telling you, if something crazy happened in your own family, would you throw your kids out? Initially you might, but then you would say, no, they're my kids. I'm going to love them. I'm going to love them. And this is what we get to do. It's what we get to do. And you should not be so afraid. You should not be so afraid that this thing is going to get weakened because you love. Because love doesn't weaken. It actually strengthens God's intention in the earth. And I won't be afraid. And what you need to do is you need to get in that mode. I won't be afraid. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. Because the more that you think you can, the more that you can. What is it called? It's called reinforcing the faith of God. Have faith. Have faith. Have the faith of God. Have the faith of God. What kind of faith does God have? All things are possible. Anything's possible. God can take any of this stuff. For instance, I'm going to tell you, I met with somebody this week that I, they've been in my life for quite a while, and they're crazy. They're absolutely crazy. And if I told you details, you would agree with me, I promise. Just crazy. They're just out there, and there's very little in their life that truly represents who Jesus is. Very little. And yet they confess it, and in addition to all of that, they are extremely prophetic. I mean, this guy sees dreams and things, and it's like, and he's telling dreams, telling me dreams about things, and it's like, wow, and I'm hearing this stuff, and and my natural man wants to say, hey, bozo, you can't even put your shoes on right. I mean, you're ignorant to people, and you're a thief. You're stealing things from people and all that stuff, and yet God's speaking through them. And when all that stuff is going through my mind, I'm hearing the Lord say, arise and eat. Because if God can use a donkey, and if you weren't offended, I'd call it what it really was. If God can use that, then He could sure use somebody who is not living and walking the way you think they should. He can do it, and and in fact, oftentimes He does it. Now, that doesn't mean that you and I just go out and find the weirdest, strangest person and just listen to everything they say. I'm not telling you that at all. But I'm saying that when God puts it right in front of your face, it would be really important and really prudent for you if you would take those things and say, Lord, I know you're showing me something. And oftentimes what God does is He hides His treasures in things that offend most. Because when they offend, it drives away those who don't have the right kind of heart. Because honestly, in all of this world, you tell me, who's God working with the most in all of this world? You. He's working with you. And so instead of us making about everybody else and all this stuff, instead of us making it about that, just know that God's working with you. And all this stuff that's going on in your life, God is, He's setting the circumstances up because it's a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm. And don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that God did it. God made all those things happen. I'm telling you that whatever's going on, whether it's something else or your own dumb stuff, God is arranging a perfect storm, and He's setting this thing so that you and I can move from a position, and He's making the transition. He's making the transition from Abba to Father. He's changing the level of relationship. Now, it doesn't mean that we're leaving Abba, because Abba means, I'm a little child and He's my daddy, and it's awesome. And that's a wonderful place. But you cannot enter into inheritance with a child mind. You have to come to a level of maturity, and that level of maturity says, there's my Father. There's my Father, and my Father, and in this new relationship, in this new thing, I'm moving. And again, I'm not leaving behind that he's my daddy. I'm not leaving that behind. I'm just saying that I have to increase in this relationship to where He's now my Father, and because He's my Father, I am His son. And in this father-son relationship, I get to share, and I get to enter into. I get to have some inheritance because I've now proven myself responsible. And this new thing that God's doing is He's bringing us to this place of responsibility where you can actually handle the inheritance, and you are wise with it, and God's going to bring us to positions of great influence. And it's strange because, there are some people you can talk to about greatness, and they're like, I don't want to be great. I just want to get by. Baloney. You want your kids to call you an idiot? You want your grandkids to say, "Hey, Dumbo, you old fart"? Do you want them to say that? Absolutely not. You look forward to their respect and their honor. You want to be something. All I'm telling you is that all of us want to be something. And what's happening now is that God's desire for us is to bring us up to another level, to say it's okay for us to want to be something. It was God-given. We were created to have influence in the world. And especially because we know who we are. We know what God's called us to be. We know that we were created to have impact in our world. And because of that, I begin to arrange my life and set myself in a position to hear what God's saying, because I don't want to end up with having position and have nothing to give them. I mean, to live my life and just to get by, and then when it comes time to have something to give, I would hate to have, and this is not in the natural as much as it is the spiritual, but wouldn't it be terrible if you sat down at the family reading of the will in your family, and they said, "To all of my kids, I give you nothing. I spent it all." It's cute and it's funny, but it's very sad. The bumper stickers that say, "I'm out spending my children's inheritance." I know it's funny, it's cute, haha. But that the general attitude should never be that. It should be that I want to give them something, and it's not. I'm not talking about natural things, but I'm talking about in the spirit. I want to give those that follow behind me something that they can grab onto and say, "Wow, this is what I got from them. This is so rich. I'm going to treasure this." So I'm determined to be overwhelmed, to be overcome with this great sense of passion for Jesus, that because of who He is and because of what He's done, and I know that He's moving me to a new place, to a new level of love for Him, restoring my first love, actually. And so I'm going to conclude with this, but I think that from my understanding, I have to, the only way for me to get to where I'm going is I have to find new levels of intimacy with the Lord. The only way for me to get there, and the only way for me to get there really is for me to understand who I am. You see, I can't come to greater levels in God if I don't know His character and His nature. What is God really like? And if I don't know what He's like, it's difficult for me to become like something that I don't know. It's the whole issue that I've been talking about the last few weeks about trust. If I can't trust something that I don't know. I mean, you can just tell people, just trust me, and it's like I can't trust something I don't know. Have you ever, I've done this many times, and I've been around them a lot. I know, but have you ever looked at an airplane and you think, how does it do that? How can that be? And especially the new ones, there's very little wing, and these things are incredibly heavy. They're like stacking, 20 loaded tractor trailers together and putting wings on it, and those things fly. How does it do that? And in your mind, you're thinking, how does it do that? And then you have the guts to get on one and do it. Do you know why you do it? Because you trust. You trust, and you trust because you know that many people have done this before, and it happens all the time, and the likelihood of this thing crashing is very, very, very small. And so you do it. You trust. the same thing happens in the Spirit. We learn to trust because we start to understand the nature of God, and I trust Him. I can't figure Him out. One of the things that's amazing about God is that He is incredibly constant and unpredictable. But He's constant. And so as I develop those characters, that characteristic in my heart, as I've developed that, I learn to trust Him and I lean into Him instead of being frustrated or wonder where God's at. And the more, and it's true that He's bringing us into new levels because there's greater challenges that are coming for us. It's absolutely true that the world is it's leaning crazier and crazier. It's insane. But with all that being said, there's a greater need for people who know their God to have a voice or to be able to tap into God, to know what God's saying. And so what God's doing is He's grooming us. And if we're satisfied with perpetual immaturity, then we're going to find ourselves irrelevant and powerless. And it's no wonder, because we haven't learned who He is, and we can't be trusted because there's been no development. Because everything that happens in our life, we get offended, we get irritated, we blame God. We're holding people responsible for all the things that they've done wrong. It's always that. We're busy putting people in categories because it's easier for us. It's easier for us to live if I categorize them. Then I don't have to think, and I can go on and be whatever I wanted to be. Selfish, selfish, selfish. God's calling us into something so much greater. And so we have to do something. And I'm telling you that men and women alike, and I'm not picking on men today, but I'm telling you that we men have to learn greater levels of intimacy. We men especially need to learn greater levels of intimacy. And we learn levels of intimacy by thanksgiving, by our passion. We stir up our passion. We stir it up. Something should happen inside of me whenever I get to worship the King of Kings. And I stir that up. And I refuse. I refuse to let the level of sacrifice be so much higher than my level of passion. I mean, when He's done something amazing for me, I need to know. Not just that He has done or just in the last week, but to know what God has done in my life and what He accomplished on Calvary. My passion needs to be so great that I just keep stirring it up, and I keep that in front of me, because if my level of intimacy with Jesus does not increase, there can be no increase in authority in the earth. And so I've got to stir that up, and I'm going to whatever it is, and I keep going back to this, but it's really, really important. It's important, and I saw it so clearly last night in a dream. I know that my passion has to increase. I cannot just sit and let somebody else worship for me. I can't listen to Christian radio and let them worship for me. This week I had a challenge with one of my jobs. It was a truck, and it was just aggravating, frustrating, whatever. And it was another Muslim, and And I knew what it was, and I knew that when I did this, it would cause problems. But it was, it was just really frustrating, and nothing was working, and I kept doing, and finally I got it, and started up, and it was awesome. And so I just ran out and I threw my hands in the air. I said, "Thank you, Jesus," and the Muslim wasn't very pleased about that. I think he would have rather his truck not started. But I want my passion for Jesus to be bumped up, and I'm determined that I'm gonna do this in any atmosphere, in any situation. This is what I'm gonna do, and I'm saying it, I'm confessing it before you, and I confess it in my own heart every day. This is what I'm looking for, and I want you to do the same. I want your passion to increase. I want you to stir that up, because you can only be intimate to the level of your passion. And we are going somewhere. I'm telling you, we are going somewhere. We are going to shape the future of our city. Oh, let me start with this. We're going to shape the future. We're going to shape the future of our family, of your community, of your neighborhood, of your city, even of this nation, and it will extend to around the world. We are going to shape that by our level of intimacy, of the way that we are intimate with the Lord, and our passion for Him determines all of that. He's doing something new. I'm telling you that my fullness, or my complete, not even like completeness, but my fullness is linked. It's linked to who that I know that I am in Jesus. It's all linked to that. You remember when Moses was going before Pharaoh, and actually God was speaking to him about what he was going to do, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, you're going to lead these people out, and Moses was just, he just couldn't get it. And so God said in Exodus chapter 7, He said, verse 1, He says, God said, I'm gonna make you a temporary God to a temporary guy. And when I say that, He didn't invite Moses into the fourth member of the Trinity. But he said this, "See, I have made you as God to Pharaoh." It was a temporary thing. I'm going to make you look like God to Pharaoh. Because God is going to, I see God saying, I'm going to equip you to do what I've called you to do. I will do that. And the really cool thing is that when Moses finally stopped all the stuttering and all the apprehension, did you know that everything that God has called you to do is dependent on your identity in Jesus? In fact, I can even go so far as to say that everything that you will ever be in your life depends on your identity. It depends on who that you think you are. And I told you last week, a couple weeks ago, if you think you're pretty, you carry yourself like you're pretty. And if you're a guy, I see that all the time. I guess because I just kind of noticed that. But if you're a guy and you think you're strong, you walk like you got corn cobs under your armpits. You kind of walk like this, and you have that certain strut, and you tilt your head back, and you kind of you got that walk, No, you know what I'm talking about. They have that strut, and kind of thing. And if you know that, you kind of conduct your life, all of your life like that, and and you go up and brush up against somebody like that, and immediately they flex so they can you can feel their muscles, and it's like, okay, at ease, it's chill, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. And all of what we are is based on what we think we are, and we live our life like that. Now, if you know who you are in Jesus, and you can't be taken off of that, that means that when you pray for people and they don't receive you, you're not offended? Doesn't bother you? It doesn't even bother you. It's like, cool. This is cool. Yay. Next. And we just go right on because we know who we are. We're not shaken by that stuff. And I'm telling you that God oftentimes when he's trying to reinforce our identity, he doesn't listen to all your stuff about who you think you're not. He doesn't even listen to you. He just goes right on and keeps telling you who you are. I mean, you look at all the greats in the Scripture. And not all of them, but most of them. Gideon, Moses, they're all apprehensive. They're apprehensive. Of course, there were some that weren't so apprehensive, like David. And I love his courage. I love David's courage. I was reviewing this week with a friend of mine, and we got into such a laughing fit about it because we were talking about David and what he was and how it must have been for him. And just how that when he was in his private time and he was spending time with the Lord, and that intimacy became such an intimidation for the enemy. Here he is, and he thought it was insignificant, and he thought maybe he could have thought that Dad doesn't really like me. I'm out here by myself. I mean, he had other brothers, right? And I'm here at this lowly job of tending sheep. This is just ridiculous. And my other brothers are warriors. They're fighters. And here I am. Oh, here comes a bear. And so he gets out his, and he gets out his slingshot and or whatever else he used to kill it. And all the while he's practicing. I don't think he's really got in mind like one day I'm going to kill a giant. I don't think he's got that in mind. He's just playing. And he backs up a little further. He can hit that tree with that stone. And so he backs up another 5 paces and he goes, okay, here we go again. And he's getting better and better at it. What's he doing? He's practicing. And I'm going to go so far as to tell you he's practicing intimacy. Why? Because he's saying, Lord, I just really want to be good at that. I really want to be good at this. David had developed this confidence on the inside because of all that he had been through. And instead of him taking it as an offense, or that this is not working, or nobody sees me, nobody knows me, nobody likes me, people are making fun of me, this is not working. Do you know what people are saying about you? Do you have any idea what people are saying about you? I've had people say that to me fairly recently. Do you know what people say about this place? Do you know? My job is to be intimate with Jesus. That's what I really care about. Because all those things will be shattered when there's a need and you've got the goods. All I want to do is keep practicing with my slingshot, because one day there's a giant coming. One day there's a giant coming. I'm going to keep practicing. And so he's running out, and and one day he still gets this little minuscule job. Okay, he's delivering cheese sandwiches to his brothers, grilled cheese. And he goes down to the battlefield, and he hears this giant taunting, and he says, and he knows his brothers. He knows his brothers are strong, and they're all mature, and there's these mighty warriors, and they've been practicing, and they've got their swords polished, and their shields are all done up, and they've got all this decoration in them, and Jehovah. I imagine their swords say Jehovah and say the mighty God and our deliverer. And this giant comes out, and all he can hear is the tinking and clamoring of swords, and people are scared to death. And they've created this great sham about, this God of Israel that could deliver them, and yet they're scared to death. And David said, did you hear that? And they're like, get in here, quick, get in here, just get away, get away. No, David said, did he say what I think he said? And he's going through this and reviewing all these things in his mind. He said, did you hear what he said? Shut up. Shut up. Don't say that. Get away. Get away. Go back. Go back to tending sheep. And David's like, no. And then word got back. David said, and how Saul said, what makes you think you can do this? David said, well, I killed a bear and a lion. I did it. And it's really funny because in today's world, we would say it quite a bit different. Okay? So please understand, I'm not trying to be ignorant here, but in our world today, we would have said a whole lot differently. But David essentially said, who is this guy that doesn't have any goods? Oh, yeah, that's what he said. Who is this guy? Who are you talking about? This guy that he hasn't got anything going on? I mean, are you serious? This is what David's saying. I mean, if he was bringing this out like this uncircumcised. I mean, he doesn't even fit. I mean, he's ridiculous. He's not even fit for anything. Get him out of here. And so, David's saying these things, and he's, because he's full of confidence, because he's full of intimacy. He knew how to tap in, and he stayed tapped in all the time. And this is what intimacy does for us. It causes us to stay tapped in and to never, ever be afraid of circumstances and look at situations and feel helpless and hopeless, because in our intimacy with Jesus, we know that God can do anything. And that's what I'm going to stir up all the time in my life. All the time. God, I know you can do anything. And I remind myself of this phrase that I've said to you many times. God has perfectly designed a favorable outcome for all of your circumstances. Because if you are in Christ, so are all of your circumstances. So here we are. We're going to be. And we're looking for that new thing, saying, Lord, I know you're bringing something brand new. You're going to make us. You're going to make us. You're going to raise us up to be the force in the earth that will radically change the way life is done. Yeah. So, Father, I pray that you'd put in us a heart that's courageous, a heart that's full of courage to stand against whatever is common and whatever is normal. Because, Lord, we declare that you are bringing us into this new thing that's going to put some demands on us. And we say yes ahead of time. Yeah, we sign our name to the bottom of this contract, even though the page is blank, and we say, Lord, you fill in the details. Whatever it is, all I know right now is that I trust you because I have come to know your character, your nature, and that you're a good God, and that you're always, always, always good, and it's your goodness that prevails. Because your grace never stops. It never stops, and it extends to the lowest low. And so we lean into you. We lean into you because we know we can trust you. We know we can. We know, Lord, that you have been faithful. And so we trust you. In Jesus' name.